So let's get started. Welcome to today's webinar. We are dishing about WordPress. So if you've been hearing a lot about WordPress and you're wondering if it's the solution for your website, then you're in the right place. This is going to help you as a beginner get comfortable with WordPress and how to use it. We're going to give you a behind the scenes look at the WordPress dashboard and then walk you through the steps of setting up your first website. But first we want to know, so we know who we're talking to today, we want to know what is your experience with WordPress? There's a poll that's going to be launching on your screen, and the question probably needed to be edited a little bit, but we want to know how much experience do you have with WordPress? How confident do you feel in using WordPress? Take a minute, look at the choices on the screen, and answer with the one that's most closely resembles you. I'll give you just a second. Okay, so some answers are still coming in, but it's really pretty interesting. It looks like a lot of you already have a WordPress website, but you're wanting to be more confident in how to use it. So I feel pretty comfortable that even if you have a WordPress website, you're going to learn some things today that are still going to be useful for how to manage it, some security things you might want to know, and of course we'll go over design themes and plugins. So I hope there's going to be a little bit for everybody here, and we're really glad that you have joined us. So let's get back to the slides here. So first off, let me introduce myself. The voice that you've been listening to for a few minutes. My name is Blair Williamson. I am the content marketing manager for HostGator. I manage the HostGator blog, which is a WordPress website. And I've been working in WordPress since 2010 and building sites in WordPress since 2014. Also joining me today is Sean Dundon. He's the product manager for HostGator. He's been around with HostGator for a while, so he's been on lots of different teams from systems administration to support and customer experience. And Sean's a big deal on our product team, and that means he's building lots of the features of the HostGator platform. So he knows a lot of the ins and outs of what we're working with in the HostGator platform, and then of course in WordPress. So Sean, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Blair. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. Also online, we have Jana Thibodeau. She's part of our social media team here at HostGator, and she's going to be following along with your comments on social media. So you can share what you like or even questions on Twitter using hashtag HGWebinar. And then also Jana's going to be following along in the chat window to help with our Q&A section at the end. Anything else you want to throw in, Jana?
No, I think you covered it. I'm going to be tweeting some highlights live from the @HostGator handle, so you can check those out now. Yeah, and if you want to ask a question on Twitter, you can even ask them after the event. If something comes up, just use that hashtag HGWebinar, and we'll try to get you an answer.
Awesome. Thanks, Jana. Okay, so let's get started. So what is WordPress? Kind of for those of you who are not familiar with it, this is a foundation. If you are familiar with it, you're probably going to know some of this, so just bear with me. But WordPress is a content management system, which means that it's a software that can help you create and edit content. And it's the most popular content management system on the market right now. In fact, more than 30% of websites worldwide are run by WordPress. It started as a blogging platform, and really any type of website is now can be used for WordPress. WordPress is an open source content management system. That means anybody can contribute code, build features, build design themes for WordPress. So this is really great because that means there's tons of people that have become really familiar with WordPress that can help you out with what you're working on. It also means that WordPress is like really customizable because there's lots of features that you can find online, lots of design themes. You can put anything on it and customize it how you want. But on the other hand, this does mean you need to be a little bit more aware of security because since anybody can just build things for WordPress, you want to be aware of what you're getting. Make sure that it's safe, that it's reputable, and we're going to give you some tips on how to do that today. WordPress, the software itself is free to use, which is really great. All you need is a domain and the hosting space for it. So that's like a huge benefit of WordPress. Another big benefit that that I appreciate that you might be interested in as well is that there are multiple user accounts that you can have on one website in WordPress. So let's say you have multiple people that are responsible for your website and you want different people to be able to log in with their own accounts, but then you can also give them different levels of access. So maybe one person is an administrator level, which means they can do anything on the site and edit, manage, manipulate anything. And then maybe you have somebody else that is going to be managing the blog and you only want them to have like author access to create a page, but not to be able to edit the design. So that's a really great benefit of WordPress. Okay, so the next thing you need to know is about the dashboard. So now that we know a little bit about WordPress and kind of the background history of what it is, let's look under the hood. So the dashboard is the first place that you're going to log in when you come to your site. From the dashboard, you're going to manage all the features and the settings of your site. And then you will also, if there are updates or notifications from WordPress, you'll see those when you log into your dashboard as well. So when you log in, you can log in from your HostGator cPanel. But honestly, for me, the easiest way to log into any WordPress website is by adding just a little bit of code to the end of the web address, like this. So any website in the world, if you add /wp-admin to the end of the website, it'll pull up the login screen for you to be able to log into that site. This is actually how I log into the HostGator blog every day. So this is the easiest, quickest way to get to log in. So now that you kind of know how to log in, I'm going to pass it over to Sean so he can give us a demo of the dashboard and start showing us some different things. So give me just 1 second. I'm going to pass presenter access to Sean.
Great, thank you, Blair. Okay, and thanks everybody for joining us. So yeah, we're gonna hop right into the dashboard. Just for context, real quick before we do, so I'm running this on just a HostGator hatchling package. Nothing really fancy there. I do have an SSL that's available to me that was provisioned automatically for free. So we're gonna set that up as well, but just wanna make sure it's there before I configure WordPress to use it. Another thing to know about this is running on PHP 7. WordPress still runs on a lot of versions of PHP, but we strongly recommend going with the most up-to-date version you can. Any modern reputable host should be able to provide a good version of PHP for you. And obviously HostGator will provide a free SSL as well. So going to WordPress. So we started with a very vanilla installation of the newest version of WordPress. When it comes to security, that's probably one of the biggest things to start with, so making sure you're running the up-to-date version. So this is WordPress 5.3.2, I believe, which is what came out in November of 2019, or December of 2019. We'll take a look at the updates in a second just to make sure. If you're using an older version of WordPress, I would encourage you to update as soon as possible. Just as a general best practice. So we added /wp-admin onto our URL to get to this login page. I'm using myself a password manager. I'm using Chrome in this instance. I don't necessarily recommend the Chrome password manager over any others, but having worked on thousands of WordPress websites, I will tell you that when it comes to security, if a website is compromised, it's generally one of three culprits. Either the updates were very far behind, the password was insecure, or there was a plugin that was insecure. So whatever works for you to make sure that you're using a strong password, something that's long and unique and stored in a safe place, I would strongly recommend. So moving on, let's go ahead and log in. So yeah, as I mentioned, using a password manager for this login screen, really just want to make sure you've got a secure password. Just make sure not to reuse them, make sure a computer can't guess it. So we'll go ahead and log in, keeping it in the same window. Okay, great. Good with the dashboard?
Yep, we got it.
Terrific, thanks. Okay, yeah, so as I mentioned, pretty convenient place to get to quick links and shortcuts. As you get familiar and you get in the habit and you sort of understand your way around, a lot of times the shortcuts you need will be available right from here. As time goes on, you can start to customize this, etc. But as I mentioned, for now, we're going to take the long way around. So underneath dashboard, there's this homepage that we're at now, and then there's an updates page below that. So I first just want to make sure that I'm running the latest version of WordPress. And then as I mentioned, I'm also really glad to see that I know that future updates will be applied automatically. I don't want to have to be concerned about whether or not my website's secure. One of the best ways to make sure that it is secure is to stay up to date. So really great feature there. And then again, just as I mentioned, the only weird thing on this page that I can tell after a fresh installation is that the time looks about 6 hours in the future, which again, as a computer geek, pretty good indication that that means that this is set up for the wrong time zone. So as we go through the WP admin area here, we'll keep an eye out for that one. So let's just take a look through these different sections. Moving into the posts area. So posts, WordPress is used for a lot of websites, sort of all around the world, all different types of industries. It has a lot of functionality and extensibility that lends itself to that. But at its core, WordPress definitely is a blogging platform. That's really where it originated, and you'll see some indications of that. So you can think of your posts as kind of like your blog. They're things that are more reflective of maybe what you did or something that happened or something that will happen, but something that's associated with a particular time. We'll come back to these in a little bit when we create one. For now, just notice that WordPress does provide you one default post as an example. You'll be able to see that on your website as soon as you do the install, so you might have already noticed that. So we'll come back to that in a little bit, but suffice it to say, as you move forward and manage your posts, this will be the page that you use to do that. In our media section, so continuing on with the content area here, your media library basically lets you manage all of the things on your website that aren't text. The things that aren't your posts and pages, but are maybe audio recordings that you have, spreadsheets, video files, other things you'd kind of like to be able to attach to a page, maybe embed within it, but that obviously you're not going to be able to type out an image, So as you continue to develop your website and develop your content, your media library will become very helpful if you say, I'm looking for this one specific image, maybe I need to make a slight change to it, etc. Now let's go into pages. So pages and posts are pretty regularly confused. I mentioned that posts are kind of like the entries you would see in a blog. Pages are more of the static, longer living content of your website. One way I like to think about it is posts would be about the things you did, and your page would be about the things you like to do. Maybe your page is about generally what the mission of your business is, and your posts are about recent projects or new offerings or something like that. So slightly different concept between posts, but a pretty intuitive one. If your posts are like your blog, your web page is more like your page is like your traditional website. Same thing here. I might have told a little fib a little earlier that this was a vanilla install. We did go ahead and create one page that we'd have available for everyone with some recommendations and links. So you'll see that if you visit the WordPresswebinar.info domain. Moving into comments. So comments are a really terrific way to help establish and build a community. If you've been on Amazon or Facebook, you know this isn't new to us, right? Really helpful. On the other hand, though, it can be a lot of work. Really cultivating the dialogue and the community that you want to have isn't easy. You really have to take the time to engage your community there. And also you can have to do some maintenance as well with spam or things like that. There are solutions to helping to mitigate spam comments, but for now, because of the nature of this website, I'm not really ready to take comments. I don't think I have the bandwidth to maintain it. And because I'm just starting, I want to keep the complexity pretty small. So there's an example comment that we can look at here, but I'm going to go ahead for this one and move that to the trash. It's just a default comment, and I'm going to be turning comments off in a little bit while I get started. So these are your 4 sort of main areas for your comment. Your posts, which are like your blog page, your media, which is kind of like your multimedia, things that aren't text, your pages, which is more like your traditional websites where you might put your About Us page or a Contact Us page or something like that. And then your comments, which is really the content that your users create in response to the content that you create. Moving past that, we're going to get a little bit more into the feel and functionality of the website. So the next area that we have is our themes section. So themes they're very important to establishing a good website, and they're really important to providing the usability and balance that your users are looking for. That said, a good theme can only be as effective as the content behind it. And for that reason, I would generally recommend starting with your content, your posts, and your pages before getting too far into the look and feel of it. A great theme really supports the content, and that'll be easier to see as you take a look at them once you have that content. So we'll come back to themes in a little bit, but this is where you would go to change the appearance of your site. There's some customization, things like widgets and menus. We'll touch on a couple of those as we go through this, but otherwise we'll probably hold off on the more advanced topics for a later webinar. Continuing down the list here, we get to plugins. So I mentioned earlier that there are generally 3 things that are going to help keep a website, a WordPress website, secure more than anything else. One is having a very strong password that a computer can't easily guess. The next one is making sure that your software is kept up to date. The third one is really being very judicious about the plugins that you use and making sure that those are also kept up to date. You can see that WordPress comes with 2 plugins by default. The first one is the Akismet anti-spam plugin. This is a good plugin. It's very effective at its goal and can really cut down on the maintenance of managing comments. That said, for the time being, we're not going to have comments on this site, and so I'm not going to be enabling this plugin. So you can see I'm leaving it in a disactivated state there. The next plugin that we have is Hello Dolly. This was written by Matt Mullenweg, the creator of WordPress, and really what it's there for is for developers and people who want to write a plugin to be able to take a look at a very simple one. We really don't have any need to, put a Hello Dolly phrase on our website, so we're going to go ahead and delete this plugin for now. So pretty straightforward to delete a plugin. We'll come back in a little bit and add a new one as well. But for the time being, when you want to look at extensibility of your website, just know that the plugins are probably where you want to start. Continuing down, we get to our users. So Blair mentioned that one of the big benefits of WordPress is that it can support multiple users with multiple different access roles. So that's really helpful, for instance, if you have someone working on your team to create content, but they're not familiar with WordPress and you don't want to break anything, right? So you can just create a new user that's just an author, and that way they can create posts, but they can't manage your website settings. You could also have editors, contributors, subscribers. So we won't get into those roles, and generally if you're just starting, you're probably best off just sticking with one user. But as time goes on, if other people start to help on the website, definitely take a look at creating different users for each person. to just make sure you can keep things manageable and avoid any accidents, etc. Last sort of one before we get to settings is the tools section. These tend to be pretty specific needs and specific use cases that are addressed by these tools. So I'm not going to get into any of those except for the import tool specifically. If you're coming from another blogging platform, a Blogger or LiveJournal, or you just have an RSS feed, and you don't want to start completely from scratch as you move to WordPress, the import tool can be a decent way to jumpstart moving your content from that other platform. So if that is the situation that you're in and you're just starting out and you've come from another platform, I would encourage you to take a look at this import tool. Aside from that, most of these are a little more advanced and the kind of thing that I wouldn't worry about when I'm just getting started. And then finally, we'll move into the settings. So this is the last of the menus on the left here. You can do a lot in the settings section, but there's only really a few things that we need to do to get started. So first of all, I didn't set a site title when I installed WordPress, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Let's say WordPress 101 webinar. And then it gives you a tagline, which is kind of like a subtitle for your website. You don't have to use it, but we'll leave it there so that as we go through, we can get an idea of how it fits with the themes, etc. I'll just change this to one more WordPress site. Looking at the site address, the WordPress address and the site address, generally speaking, these should be the same for most of us. If you're running multiple websites on one domain, that might be different, but by and large, they should be the same. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that HostGator will provide a free SSL certificate for any domain that's configured to work on our servers. So I want to go ahead and turn that functionality on while I'm here. All I need to do is just tell WordPress that instead of using HTTP, to use HTTPS. And that way WordPress will start insisting on using the SSL. You may notice that right now at the top left of my page, it says not secure because I'm not using that SSL, but it's available, it's free, so I want to turn it on. Taking a look down the list, you see the administration email address. It's important that that's valid, especially if you need to reset your password or something. For membership, we don't let anyone register on our site right now. That may be something that we'd want to look at down the road as we get our content together and we really want to start engaging our community. But for the time being, we're not ready for the management overhead.
Hey, Sean.
So we'll skip. Yeah.
While you're on this page and you've referenced the HTTPS and the SSL a couple times, we have some people that are saying they're not familiar with SSL. Can you just give us like the 2-sentence explanation of SSL?
Absolutely. Yeah. So traditionally with web pages, with HTTP, as they would say, everything's transmitted in plain text, which basically means that if the internet's just a room full of people talking, you can hear what everyone is saying if you have the right level of access. What HTTPS does, what SSLs or secure socket layer, whatever you want to call them, what they do is they encrypt the traffic from the browser to the website. So your internet service provider can't see what your traffic is. Someone else sitting at the same Wi-Fi hotspot at the coffee shop, they can't see what you're doing. So we call them secure certificates, but a better way of thinking about them might be about privacy. What they really do is they let you keep privacy between your personal computer and the web server that your website is running on. So yeah, even though today I'm not taking, I was going to say, like, even though I'm not taking credit cards, I still am going to turn on HTTPS because it's a good practice, and in this case, it's free. So why not?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is it doesn't prevent people from like hacking your website. It's not like the main security tool you need to prevent hackers, but it protects information when somebody is filling out information on your website. So if somebody's filling out a contact form, or like Sean said, buying something online and putting their credit card information into your website, it helps protect that information so somebody can't just easily find it and steal it. And HostGator does offer SSL certificates for free. So you can just go to our help site. It's help.hostgator.com. and figure out how to turn on the SSL certificate for whatever type of package you have. Like Sean said, it's free and you need it. So go ahead and do that.
Yeah, and you'll notice, I think, we're still looking at the SEO implications of SSL. That's I think they're slightly favored there, but you can expect that as time goes on, your users will come to expect HTTPS more and more, and likely Google will continue to emphasize and sort of throw warnings when it sees the websites aren't using it. So definitely a good idea. Okay, great, thank you, Blair. I appreciate that. So I think just about done on this page. We have no new members because we're not ready for that yet. So there'll be a subscriber. It doesn't really matter yet. We are in English and we're in the United States, so we'll leave that one there. And then here's our time zone. So I'm glad this one came up because I noticed that was a little wrong earlier. If you don't know how far you are from UTC, which is a pretty geeky thing to know, the other way to pick your time zone is just to name the biggest city in your time zone. So for instance, if I were on the East Coast, I would go with New York. If I were in the UK, I might go with London. Much to the chagrin of those of us in Houston, the biggest city in our time zone is Chicago. So we will go with Chicago for our time zone. And that way, whenever I post something, it'll show, 12:30 p.m. instead of 6:30 p.m. Otherwise, if you're happy with the way your dates look, your time format, we're going to go ahead and click Save. Okay, and you'll notice now the Not Secure has been replaced with a lock up at the top left. And if I click into the URL, you can see that this website is now running on HTTPS. So whenever I send more data or type something into WordPress, that'll be encrypted between my browser and the web server. So there are a few more settings that you'll want to get into as you become more familiar with creating content. There's settings on, how do you want creating new articles to look like, etc. Generally not something you need to get into at this point, but as you start to become more familiar, definitely worth taking a look at there. Blair, I'm going to move into actually going ahead and creating a post. Did you have any other?
No, that's a great idea. I was hoping you would do that because I know we're running a little behind what I thought we would. So let's show them how to do a post and how to use the editor.
Okay, and I just realized some of my notes, I mentioned I was going to turn off comments. So real quick before I do that, I went to settings and discussion and say where it says allow people to submit comments on new posts. I'm going to turn that off for now. In the future, again, I might turn that back on, but for now, I'm just not ready. So if you're not ready for comments, you can go ahead and just turn those off for new posts under that setting. Okay. So to create a new post, actually, you know what? I'm going to create a new page first. So you'll notice we created one page already, recommendations from the webinar. And then WordPress gives you a draft privacy policy. So this isn't published yet. It's in that draft status, so we can only see it because we're logged in. And then they give you one sample page. I'm going to go ahead and just edit this sample page for the time being. Okay, so when you come into the editor for the first time, you'll get a little bit of an introduction to the WordPress block editor. It's kind of similar to desktop publishing software, and it's really not far off from a modern sort of a word processor. So I would encourage you to go through the tips as you check this out the first time. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and make this page our own. So when you're starting a website, one of the most challenging things is just actually getting the content on paper. I always recommend starting with why. Sometimes this is an about us page. Sometimes it's just a description of your services, or it's a little bit of a bio. But starting with why you're building a website will really help make the rest of the content creation much more straightforward. So what I did is I created a new paragraph just by typing enter in front of the second one. And I'm going to say, okay, this blog was created to support customers or support WordPress users in getting started. Nothing crazy. I'm not going to make y'all watch me type. There's a lot of other comment here. You can see these blocks already exist. So I'm going to go through and I'm just going to delete these blocks for now. I don't really need them. So pretty straightforward. You can see editing it is very clear. I want to add in a link as well. One great website is the WordPress Codex. This is effectively their knowledge base, and it's a really helpful resource if you need any information on how WordPress works. So I'm going to add in that. So to add a link, I'm just going to highlight this, click on the link, and then paste the URL. So now I've got a good link to the WordPress Codex. Maybe I want to add an image as well. So I can just sort of click on the image here. I'm going to do an upload. I'm going to get my snappy WordPress image. So again, pretty straightforward in terms of how to organize this. It's pretty intuitive. Kind of what you see is what you get here. As you make it through creating your website, you'll notice there's a preview button at the top right. So you can click on preview and get an idea of what this page would look like based on your current theme. So nothing fancy, but just looking to get started. This will help us understand where we're at. So I'm going to go ahead and click update. So that's pretty much it. I can view the page again in a new tab, see what it is outside of preview mode. You notice looks like the same page, so that's great. The preview mode really helps you get a good idea of that. Okay, so we've got a page. Let's go ahead and make a post as well. You can see, by the way, since I added an image, that image has already shown up in my media library. So we're not going to spend a lot of time in the media library, but something to be aware of. So let's go make a post. I'm going to go ahead and delete this hello world post, and we'll just make a fresh one. So click add new at the top. It's live. Okay, so this is more of a time-driven thing, right? So I'm talking about the birth of the blog. Over time, as the blog gets popular, people will probably stop reading this page, but this is my initial post. So, inaugural post for the okay. So again, pretty straightforward. It is the block editor. I like to just use enter to add a new paragraph. Same thing as with the pages. You can easily go add an image. You can add a gallery of images. Just take a look at the different blocks available, play around with them. There's really a lot you can do there, but I generally recommend keeping it simple as you get familiar. You get that content created and then just keep expanding from there. In this case, though, I don't want to publish this right away. This is a blog post. Maybe I still want to build a couple of things out before I make this post live. So what I'm going to do is on the document side here on the right, you'll notice that it says publish immediately. What I'm going to do instead is I'm not going to publish immediately. I'm going to push it out about 20 minutes. And we're going to say, let's publish this at 1 p.m. I know this is in Central Time now because I fixed the time zone. So let's go ahead and publish this at 1 p.m. We have that set. You can see that the date there is correct. Just double check that. And now your post button at the top right or publish has become schedule. So we'll click on schedule. Are you ready? It'll become public on February 20th or February 12th. They want me to add tags, but I'm not going to add tags for now. And we'll go ahead and schedule it. So really helpful feature there, especially when you're creating new blog posts. If you want to get in the habit of releasing new content every day, you can start building a backlog of those posts and just schedule them to update. So really provides a lot of flexibility in management and lets you still keep a good active website in a way that meets your schedule. Okay, and I think with that, we've got a website, we have a post, we have a page, we've got a site title. Let's start taking a look at the appearance here. So I mentioned, starting with content is always going to be a good decision. You really want to be able to find a theme that supports your content and your messaging and works in such a way that it helps bring that to your users. It's very hard to do that if you don't have the content. We don't have very much content at this point, but we have enough that we can get a basic idea for what our website might look like. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new theme. In a moment, Blair will take us through looking at professional and paid themes. But for now, we're just going to start with a free one. In terms of security, I would generally recommend going with a pretty popular theme. Generally in WordPress with open source, the more popular and updated something is, a good indication that it'll be well supported and well maintained into the future. So it looks like this Astra theme is the most popular theme that didn't come pre-installed with WordPress. Astra is a very high quality theme, so I'm going to go ahead and install this theme. Okay, that's installed. You can see I can either activate that or do a live preview. So I'm going to click into the live preview here. So similarly to when we previewed our page, the theme live preview allows you to see what your website looks like as it currently is. You can see ours right now is pretty empty. We've got recommendations from the webinar page, which Blair did a great job on, and we have our sort of why page. But we don't have a lot on our home page. It mainly moved most of the content over to the side. So I like the look of this a lot. I think we're starting with a pretty straightforward text-heavy website. We want it to be easy to read. I like the spacing on here. The colors don't seem that they're distracting and they work well. So I think this is probably good enough for what we need today. It looks like there's a lot of functionality on the left. So as time went on, if I needed to customize it, I could. If I wanted more options, Astra supports additional features as well for a professional version. But this one looks like it's good enough for me. I can create my content in here. So I'm going to go ahead and click Activate and Publish. And that's it. So I have my new theme published. So as you see, this is what our WordPress blog looked like when we started. It had a hello world with the default content. We're going to do reload on this page and see what it looks like now. So a little bit different. It doesn't have the front content. It's got the links to the recommendations from the webinar, and it's pretty readable. So it could be fancied up a bit, but it'll definitely work for us for now. Blair, do you want to take us through what a professional theme or what a paid theme process looks like?
Sure. So for most people, one of these free themes might work totally fine for you. But if you're interested in a little bit more customization, or let's say you need to add some special features to your site, specifically, this is most common with something like an online store, then you might be interested in getting what we call a premium theme or a paid theme. When you're looking for premium themes, the most important thing that I would recommend is that you look for one that comes with really good documentation, meaning it has a really good user guide that can show you how to set up all the features in the sections. Like you've seen with the one that Sean just installed, it kind of looked blank, right? I mean, it's still a shell and you have to figure out where to put all the pieces. And that's where your documentation that comes with a theme can be really helpful. It can show you specifically where everything needs to go and how to set it up. So I want to show you what I was looking for earlier with themes. Give me just 1 second to take over presenter mode so I can show you my screen. Okay, so like I was saying, let's say you are interested in building an online store. The most common, most popular plugin that we recommend for online stores is WooCommerce. WooCommerce is a plugin that you attach to WordPress to help you run a store. And there's lots of places that you can go find themes, but for something like WooCommerce, you're definitely going to need a theme that's compatible with WooCommerce. You can't necessarily just put any theme on top of WooCommerce and have it work. I'll tell you a little story. I actually had this happen with a client. They had built their first website. It was beautiful, looked great, it was live, and then they come to me and wanted me to set up their online store for them. They had already decided they wanted to use WooCommerce, but the theme they chose wasn't compatible. So I had to start completely over and build another site so that it would work with WooCommerce. So that's my first tip, is if you are thinking forward in your vision for your site, and you know you want to put something like WooCommerce, something special or unique to it, just make sure that the design theme that you're choosing is compatible. And this is an opportunity where I think it would be helpful or beneficial to choose a premium theme. You might be wondering, how much do premium themes cost? Well, of course, like with anything else, the price varies, but in my experience, most themes are under $100. I bought one just yesterday to demo for this webinar, and it was less than $45. So it's, you know, pretty affordable for having something that you can customize and have it look a little different than what comes installed in WordPress. So I chose this pet shop theme, and it keeps sending me into the dashboard, but I want to show you what this looks like from the homepage. So with WooCommerce, there will be a lot of different themes and ways that you can shop around. But I chose this one called Pet Shop. It has a preview, a demo of what the site would look like, and it comes with a live demo in. It's kind of like a dummy site that's a live demo that you can scroll through and look to see how you like it. But it also comes with all of this documentation. So before you even decide to buy it, you can see that there's a lot of information on how to install the theme. And it comes with different instructions here, like, hey, there's a key theme that you need to type in to prove that you bought and paid for it. I might not have known that if I hadn't gone through their documentation. So this is where I think it's really helpful to go through the documentation. Also right here, it has like, how to configure your storefront, how to set up your homepage template, recommended image sizes. So this is really helpful. So I definitely recommend that you look for a theme that comes with some really good documentation. So once I downloaded or paid for the plugin or the theme, sorry, even in my account, right here, I can go back to, you can see documentation. I can go back to the specific documentation that came with it. But let me show you how to install this theme if you had selected a premium theme. So once I'm able to log back in, it's really as simple as going back to the theme section. So right here from your theme section, see how up in the left-hand corner it says upload theme? So if you click on this, and then choose the file, obviously we're on Sean's computer right now, so he's not going to have it because I purchased the theme. But it will give you the option right there to choose the file at the top. You click on that and it will, you can just choose the zip file. Keep it in the zip file from where you purchased it in the themes, and then it'll just upload it right in there. And then you'll see the theme show up down here below in your different options of the themes that are available. And you'll just go through the same steps that Sean showed earlier of, clicking through, select, activate. It's just as simple as it is to select one of these free themes, but you just go through that additional step to be able to upload it. So when it comes to customizing the theme, and I talked about this a second ago, as far as something you need to look in the documentation for the theme, There's 3 places that you can look for in how to customize this, and Sean demoed a few of them earlier, but one is under your theme settings, one is under appearance customize. You'll see this in the left sidebar. Sean showed that earlier, it gave you all the different options. And another one is in the widget section. Yeah, see right here, this is the customize section. So it'll show you which different pieces you can easily customize. And then Sean, if you'll go back to the dashboard, from this widget section, I want to show you what this looks like. So a widget is a piece of content or functionality that you can have on your site. And I like to think about widgets that they come in sections. So if you think about your website or the design, whatever design you're in, you can think about this even from the demo of the design. Think about taking that site and breaking it into grids. Like if you were to put, you know, rectangle shapes all over the site. So Sean's going to show you. See how on this right-hand side where it says recent comments in the search bar, like that is clearly like a vertical section right there. The page on the left where it says recommendations from the webinar, that is clearly a vertical block section as well. And then your navigation across the top where it says WordPress 101 webinar, that whole bar is a vertical a horizontal section across the top as like a block of content, right? So if you think about how to think about this page in grids, that's where you might often find your widgets. And a lot of times with widgets, we definitely think about the sidebar. So what you're looking at right now is under the appearance widget section. On the right-hand side is, these are all the sections that are available with your design theme. So you have a main sidebar, a header, which is I showed you that's might be where your image or your logo is for your site. And then you've got a bunch of different footer sections. These could be horizontal sections that go across the page. And then on this left column where it says available widgets, these are all the widgets that you could put into those different sections. So like you see Sean doing right now, he just grabbed the one that says archive and dragged it over there, and you can drag and drop it into the section where you want it to go. So you can put it, like he's putting an image there right now. We do this a lot with our blog. It's like an ad that shows, you know, a picture of a new feature that we have coming up. You can put an RSS feed. You can put a list of your most recent pages. You can put your categories. You can do a little block of custom HTML if you want to, you know, put an image with a link, and, you know, maybe you have a special plugin or feature somebody's built you can use that little blank HTML section. And then you just, the way you can do these, if you think about it, so look at the main sidebar right now, how you have search, recent posts, and recent comments. If you wanted to move those around and you wanted your recent comments above recent posts, you just pick up one of those and just drag and drop it around in order. It's really easy, and then you'll see that automatically update on your homepage. So that's one thing you need to be careful about, is this doesn't have like a save button, if you will. Like you're editing this live as you go, but you saw how easy it was to just change it back. So that's the widget section. Make sure you look there for some of the different layout features of your website. Sean, I think we have a few minutes to cover quickly plugins. If you want to talk about some plugins and show us where to do that, and how to, you know, choose a great safe plugin.
Absolutely. Yeah, so just to recap, at this point, we've gone through, we've created some content, which helps us sort of lay out what our website is. To Blair's point, if you're going to do e-commerce or something, I would consider that the same kind of content you'd want to get done early. At that point, you can take a look at your theme, find something that fits it. Again, to Blair's point, if you're going to have a store, you want to make sure you've got a theme that suits that store. So this is where you would add that sort of key functionality. If there's something you need your website to do that WordPress doesn't do out of the box. So if we wanted to add WooCommerce, for instance, we would just come right in here and do a quick search for WooCommerce, and we'd find it at the top there. Sorry. Let me show that again. So you'd see that there's a WooCommerce plugin available. In this case, what I think I'm really looking to set up on my website is I want to make sure that it's very fast. Like most websites, they get read way more than they get updated. and reading a website should be really quick, and it's important to keep your users engaged. So that's where I'm going to start. Now, finding a plugin to use for that, I happen to know that what I'm looking for is a caching plugin. But if I search for that, there's 97 pages worth of results. How do I find a plugin that's going to work for me, that I know is going to be reliable, secure, well-maintained, etc.? So there's a few options to that end. One, you can go and look for a rating. So HostGator put out a blog post that we go through the 15 most popular plugins. Popularity is a pretty good indication that it's been tested by a lot of people and it's working well for them. So you can kind of follow the popularity as a good indicator. In this case, though, my hosting provider, HostGator, recommends I use the WordPress Super Cache plugin for improving my site performance. And they provide rundowns on all of the settings that I need to go through to make sure that it's optimal for the environment and I can get my site going as quickly as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and install the Super Cache plugin. So we'll hop over here. I'm going to type in Super Cache. Okay, and I can see it right here. So some things I would look at before I install the plugin. How frequently is it updated? It was updated just 2 weeks ago. That's a really good sign that this is being kept up to date, it's being maintained. It's created by Automatic, who is the company who creates WordPress. So obviously if you know the organization that creates it, that's a good sign. It has a very high rating, and it's installed on over 2 million active installations. So these are the really good things to look at. If I was looking at a plugin that had a 2-star rating and only 5 reviews, only 10 installations, and last updated a year ago, I would never install that on my website. You definitely want to stick with things that are well maintained and well regarded. So with that said, we'll go ahead and click install. And the plugin's installed. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on here and click on activate. Okay, so now it says, all right, there's a warning. My server's not configured. The cache is disabled, so that's fine. Let's go through and look at the instructions that we have here. So I'm going to go to the general settings. And I'm going to go to the advanced tab. I'm going to turn on caching, and I'm going to move over to expert. And so what does this say? I need the first, third, and fifth boxes to be checked under miscellaneous. So I'm going to click the first, the third, and the fifth box for that. So enable caching. Don't cache for known users. Compress pages. Don't cache for known users. Yang. Cache. We're going to do cache for all. So I don't want to go through each step of these. And then if you ever need help, of course, if you're a HostGator customer, we'd be happy to help walk you through this as well. But I'm going to go ahead and update that. Let me see. Okay. So there's a lot more information inside of this. We are running low on time, or I would take y'all through every step here. But at least understand how this works in general. I'm going to leave this warning here. Again, if we weren't over time, I would walk y'all through that. But this is what's important.
And Sean, I was going to say, this is another thing about plugins. If you think plugins are sort of like the software that you download and install and add on to WordPress. And the plugins, you kind of have to think of them just like, like if you were to purchase, let's say, Microsoft Office, right? You would go to Microsoft Office to ask for the how to use Office, right? Rather than going to your computer and asking, like your Mac, how do I use Office, right? It doesn't come with instructions installed. Microsoft Office comes with the instructions installed. So think about plugins the same way. Like, go find the website for that plugin and you can find the install instructions there and kind of learn in their documentation how to really use that plugin to, you know, really get the most out of it. I do that a lot with all the plugins that I use on the HostGator blog. Is I go back to the plugin, like go back to the source to read and learn about it. Sean, is there any like high level things you wanted to cover before we take a few minutes to answer some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess there's just a couple more points I'd want to make. So building a website, you put a lot into it, right? Developing your content, creating your theme, etc. You do what you can to keep it secure, to protect that investment. To go along with that, the next thing I would strongly recommend that's a bit outside the scope of this webinar is to make sure that you're making backups and make sure you're making them regularly. It's one of the best favors you can do your future self. There are a lot of methods for doing that. At HostGator, we provide support for a lot of different options for making backups, and most of your web providers will. If you're looking for something that's pretty much just set it and forget it, and you want to make sure you have frequent offsite backups, I would recommend CodeGuard, but there are other options available as well that are free out of the box. The next thing, and I kind of mentioned this, is you want to keep things simple when you're starting. There are a lot of plugins. To Blair's point, the plugins are written by different organizations. They have different standards, and they all are going to require a little more work, add a little more complexity, and add a little more risk. So you definitely want to keep things as simple as you can. That said, if you want to build a complex website, you're going to need to add in that additional functionality. If you're looking for support with that kind of thing, Blair mentioned looking at the documentation for the plugin creator, for the theme creator. It's very helpful. At HostGator, we do also have a premium support service just staffed with WordPress experts who can help with this kind of thing. So that's our WP Live team. If you are looking for that one-on-one, very detailed support, or you're dealing with a more complex environment, or you just want some help for the first couple months while you get started and to have someone available, I would recommend WP Live as well. But keep it as simple as you can while you get started. I think that's really pretty much the end of my advice. Keep your site updated, keep it simple, focus on the content, and I think you'll have a good time.
Okay, thanks, Sean. I know that this has been a whirlwind of information in a short amount of time, and we're a little bit over, but I know we do have some questions that people wanted us to address. For right now, Sean, I'm going to leave you with the presenter access in case we need to demo anything. And then, you know, I can always kind of do like I did before and show you which things to click on if I want to show something off. But Jana has been taking questions throughout the webinar and on social media. Jana, do you have some questions that we should go over?
Right, there has been so many questions. It's hard to keep up. This has been a very great audience. A couple of ones I'm going to try to combine, but there seemed to be a lot of talk about knowing if a plugin is compatible, which I think you answered, but then there was like, if you upgrade the plugin or the theme, is there a risk that it's going to break something?
Yes, and unfortunately, there certainly is. We've all been through that. If you get the new version of Windows, you get the new version of Mac or Android or iOS, that there can be challenges there. There's two general rules of thumb that I would stick to. Is that generally the more frequently you update, the less likely that is to be a concern. If you tried to update from Windows 95 to Windows 10, you could expect that a lot of things are going to break. If you update more frequently, there's smaller changes, and you can sort of understand those. If you're getting to the point where you know you're running a high volume website, it gets back again to really making sure you're picking the right plugins and the right themes that are updated frequently, that have a strong user base. Those are really good indications that the developer is putting in the effort to make sure that they're not going to be breaking their users' websites. And then finally, it gets back to backups again. you want to make backups before you're making major changes. In the beginning, when you're just getting started, you can probably take backups manually and be in a pretty safe place. If you're putting a lot of effort into it and it's really critical to your business, setting up daily backups so that you can address that quickly is paramount. There's always a practical decision to be made between updating your software and preserving the current stability and functionality. But it is a website live on the internet. The internet is filled with a lot of bad computers. And so updates really are important if you want to stay safe. Better to break a functionality knowingly and restore from a backup than to have a malicious actor break into your website and be in a much tougher situation.
Perfect. Couple of questions about converting a site either from a builder to WordPress or the other way around. What kind of concerns would a user have around that?
That can be a challenge with a lot of builder platforms. They tend to be, kind of what we'd call a walled garden. They're really nice on the inside, but they can be very difficult to get out of. If you're using one of the more common ones like we mentioned here, a Tumblr, or a Blogger, LiveJournal, you can do a rough import of your content. And there are also other services available online that I won't get into, but that you can Google and find services to help with that. If you are with HostGator, of course, reach out to our support team and we can take a look at that specific situation and see if there's anything else that we can do to help you.
Blair, I think this is for you. There was a few questions about paying for a premium theme. Is that a one-time fee or an annual fee?
Yeah, that's a good question. In my experience, it's typically a one-time fee. You could have some that offer like an update, but almost all the ones that I have seen, you're picking an annual license that you use one or pay for one time and get to update whenever they release updates. Another thing that you will see when you're looking at paid themes is whether you're trying to use it on one site or multiple. So some sites will give you if you want to think about it, like a package deal where like you can use this one theme on an unlimited number of sites and you'll pay more for that. But in my experience, the ones that I've used so far has been a one-time fee.
Great. So I think a couple of questions have come in when you were talking about backups just now, Sean. Is there a plugin for backup, or how would somebody, set up? How do you recommend somebody set up those backups?
There are a number of plugins for backups. If you're using WordPress that are pretty reliable, I would take the same approach. You can look through our blog. I think we have a backup one in here, or just check out, go into plugins and just do a search real quick for backups. And make sure that you're looking for one that is, make sure that you're looking for one, again, that's popular, that's updated regularly, that has high reviews. HostGator also, we do partner with another organization called CodeGuard, which does a really good job at tracking your database changes and your file system changes and gives you the ability to actually kind of look through and roll back to a specific date. We'll post some blog links to our page that we have here on some plugins to try, and we'll make sure to include some guidelines on backup options as well.
All right, do we have time for any more, Blair, or should we?
I think it looks like we've still got a bunch of people hanging on. So they, if you've got a couple other big ones we should cover, let's go ahead and do it.
Absolutely. Another one that seemed to pop up while you were talking about themes is, how does a child theme differ and or work with your main theme?
Yeah, so I think your child theme is probably referencing WooCommerce. So for instance, on WooCommerce, you might have like one design look for the main pages of your website, and then a theme that is specific to the product pages on your website. So, because obviously you wouldn't want your homepage to look like a product site, right? With like 10 blocks of, pictures of things and no place to put content or, pages of text. So a lot of times that's kind of where you have a child theme paired with a main theme. It's just for one certain section. But if you have a child theme, it's usually going to come packaged that way. So you're not going to just be able to turn on a different theme for a certain page of your site. A lot of times you might also see that with a blog, like maybe there's a different layout for the blog page that's separate from the main website page. But if you have that, like I said, it's going to be packaged as a deal with your theme. It's not, you can't put two different themes on one website. So look for that when you're buying your package for your theme.
Okay, another one, I know we addressed SSL, but we're still getting a lot of comments on that. Sean, even though SSL is free, people do have to go activate it. And would you suggest that they go to support for help with that? Or I guess people are struggling with finding it on their dashboard or cPanel.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's pretty subtle in WordPress itself, inside of the settings, to set it to HTTPS. And that works really well when you're working with a fresh installation. There have been times where if you've already put a bit into it, it can get a little more complex than that. We do recommend a specific plugin that can really help set up HTTPS for you as well. So we'll go ahead and add that to the recommendations. But yeah, there are plugins that can do that for you too.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I just dropped that in the chat as well. There's a page on our help website that has more about, what is the SSL, why do you need it, and then how to, it's a step-by-step guide for enabling your free SSL based on the type of site you have. So even if you're using something other than WordPress, there's instructions on this page that will tell you how to activate it on your HostGator website.
Okay, another one that came up was when you guys were talking about images, people were asking if there's a limit to either the image size or the overall, like the number of images. Are you going to get dinged for taking up too much bandwidth or server space?
That's a good question. I would say from just like a general, for a general response, I would say you are not really going to run out of the number of images you can have in WordPress. And Sean, I know you're going to can tag in on this later too, but your web hosting provider may determine like an amount of space that you're designated with your package. So that's where you could end up with an issue. Sean can talk about this in just a second, but like the HostGator blog has been up since 2013, and there's, so that means there's like thousands and thousands of images in there, and we're still hosting them on the same blog. So that's not a problem. And then I know, Sean, if you want to talk about this with your hosting package size space, also there are plugins that you can use to help your images speed up. So there's a plugin called Smush, and that's what we recommend that you use so that you can still load large images without taking a long time to download those images. Anything else you want to add to that, Sean?
No, actually, I think that's perfect. Yeah, I would say generally images, especially in 2020, images just aren't that big. A lot of long videos might be more likely to cause you to run into disk space issues. At HostGator, all of our shared hosting packages have unlimited disk space, and so by and large, we just don't see problems with that with our customers in terms of space. There's no built-in limit to WordPress, and you should have all the room that you need to host the images and video for your site if you're with any modern reputable hosting provider. There are alternatives though. I mean, YouTube is great for videos, so a lot of times you might want to look at a way to embed a YouTube video instead of having it separate on your website. You're going to get functionality and you can expand your presence into another area, etc. And then Blair makes a good point. If you're going to be uploading very large images, you don't want to make every one of your users download a much larger image than they need and then have them shrink it to fit in their desktop. The browser will do that for you, but it'll be slower. So yeah, definitely there are plugins like Smush that can help optimize your images, get them to the right size, and then caching plugins, which can help with that as well. So I wouldn't worry about the disk space. I think Blair makes a good point about the speed, but yeah, there are great solutions for that.
Okay, got just a couple more. Do you want the easy one or the hard one?
Let's do the hard one first.
Yeah,
Okay,
good
a couple of
choice.
people, this goes back to the beginning. I guess you had mentioned PHP, and we got several questions, honestly, kind of throughout about how to update the PHP, and a couple of people even mentioned that they're getting the alert that it needs to be updated.
Great, yeah, so the PHP versions are important. So at HostGator, what we do is we'll set up the new version of PHP for new installations. But to the question raised earlier about updates and potentially breaking things, we won't automatically move customers to that version of PHP because we can't be 100% certain that everything will work, and we would hate to take someone's website down. PHP 7 is remarkably faster than the previous versions of PHP, and so I would strongly recommend it. If you have an existing site with HostGator and you need help moving that over, I'd probably recommend calling us, or we can look at doing another webinar, putting out a blog post about that if we don't have one handy. But normally that's something you would change inside of your hosting control panel or cPanel. So yeah, I would recommend we'll get a reference on our webpage, and then if you're with HostGator, I'd encourage you to call in and we can help get that changed for you.
Okay, and finally, some questions were coming up when you were talking about tags. Just can you explain that real briefly, what the benefit is there and exactly what they are?
I can take tags, Sean. So tags are kind of a feature from WordPress originally being a blogging platform. So put on your blogging hat for a second. There's two things you can have here. Actually, I want to cover both of them together. There's categories and there's tags. So categories are sort of like your buckets of information. So if you're thinking about blog articles, you know, maybe your categories are fashion and cooking and home decor. But then your tags are even more specific to that, and you can tag a specific article by specific topic. So maybe on my cooking category, a tag would be, you know, chicken, beef, and fish. So that then within that category, somebody could find the specific item they're looking for. We use this on the WordPress or on the HostGator blog the same way. So we have big themes that are like marketing tips, you know, web hosting tips, and then I can break it down into WordPress themes, WordPress plugins, like all of those things can be tags. And then I can use tags to display my content on my website in different ways. So, you know, maybe I have a plugin that operates by filtering content by tags. And then you can display those tags like on a word cloud on your, which would be like you know, shows a bunch of words, and then you can pick one and see all that content. So I just really like to think of tags as sort of like a really specific way to help label your information so that people can find what to read in a specific way. And then as I mentioned, tags are very helpful for sorting content in different plugins. So, you know, I can have a section that will pull in any article that's tagged as chicken recipe. So you should think of it as a way to sort your content into buckets, and then you can use those tags to display the content in different ways on your site. I know some people also asked about tags with in SEO or in search. It's not really going to impact your SEO that much because it's more like just a way to sort and organize content on your own site, more than it is like a major indicator to Google search. So it's not, tags are not a, you know, a major factor in the Google algorithm as far as what's going to make your site, you know, stand out or searchable. And for more background on SEO, we do have a webinar from a few months ago on SEO that's on our blog that you can go find and learn some basics about how to get your site optimized for search. Anything else that we need to cover, Jana?
I don't think so. There are a lot of questions asked. I think, you know, a follow-up of a blog, or if people want to continue to ask them on Twitter using that hashtag, we will certainly try to address them.
Yep, that's a great point. So continue to send us your questions, like Jana said, on Twitter with hashtag HGWebinar. You can also respond to that webinar email that you got as a reminder. And we do have a copy of all your questions, so we will sort out what we need to do next as far as reaching out to you individually, or like Jana said, putting together a blog post with the top questions. I think that might be in our future. So keep an eye out for that. And Sean, anything else on your end you wanted to touch on quickly?
No, that's it. Thank you both, and thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Thanks again for joining us today. Hope you've learned a lot, and be looking for a follow-up survey in your email. Thanks so much.